Cathy Lanier joins us in studio live to discuss these issues and more.
From NewsChannel 8, this is NewsTalk with Bruce DuPoit.
Hello and welcome. It's good to have you with us today. Bruce has this day off. We are standing by for a House Oversight and Government Reform Committee hearing on the White House security breach. The committee will ask Secret Service Director Julia Pearson how a man armed with a knife was able to make it over the fence and well into the White House. Law enforcement sources now say Omar Gonzalez ran 80 feet inside the White House all the way to the East Room before being apprehended. Pearson has some tough questions to answer, and we'll take you there live once she takes and begins. But we want to begin with our very special guest, the leader of the district's nearly 4,000 officer police force, Chief Cathy Lanier. You're now in your 8th year at the helm.
Is it 8 years?
It's
yes,
8
it is.
Years. That was one of my questions, and the producer already stuck it in there. I'm like, how long have you been at the helm? So 8 years. Yeah, we're fortunate to have you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And we're going to take your live questions. If you have them, give us a call, 703-387-1020. We'll remind you of that phone number. Chief, we were just talking about the White House security breach. And I know agency heads don't like to second guess other agency heads, but if anything were to have happened at the White House, i.e., I know homicides, you investigate homicides everywhere. The security there is still an issue for you. What's your take on what happened there?
Well, I kind of feel for Julia testifying today, because you run a large organization and there are things in place and policies in place. And when incidents happen, if everybody doesn't follow the policy that's supposed to be followed, then the leadership has to figure out why, and they have to explain. And so she's in that position today. And I'm sure she's doing a kind of thorough scrub of everything that's happening. But the bottom line is people have to be held accountable for following policy. And I'm sure following this investigation, that she's going to make sure that those who didn't follow this policy are dealt with. I mean, this is pretty serious. We deal with the people who don't follow policy in our agency. Right. It's disturbing, but in our line of work, following policy is pretty important because it can cost lives. It can cost lives, absolutely. And I know she's going to be the one under the gun. She's going to have to be the one in the hot seat to answer these questions. But there was some talk that perhaps one of the alarms had been turned down at the request of the ushers. That's the sort of thing that just can't happen to avoid something like this, I'd assume. Right, and who knows, how that's going to play out. They're trying to balance, security and some sort of normalcy at the same time, and regardless of who made the request, how far up the chain did that request go, or did somebody decide to mute that without ever saying anything? Because I'm sure it doesn't go off very often. Right. Yeah, I'm sure you can sit there and just rub your head for her and say, oh gosh, I don't envy her position right now. I don't. I really don't. Well, taking it back into our jurisdiction in the streets of D.C., fall has begun. School is underway. What's the crime picture looking like right now in the city? Well, actually looking very good. Violent crime is down, more than double digits has been all year. Robbery's down dramatically, so we've seen a hovering 20 to 25% reduction in robberies, so all of our efforts have paid off. We have a slight decline in homicides this year compared to last year, so we're hoping to finish out the last few months of the year strong. We had a good summer. A little bit of rough start of the year, but very good summer. Right. In terms of east of the river, 6th and 7th District, I know that you were throwing a lot of resources at those areas, because if you look at the crime summary day to day for the 6th and 7th District, you can see where it's just this line of, theft from autos or, assaults with a deadly weapon or robberies. How did that attack go for you in terms of sending those resources over there? Well, for the summertime, we actually did very well. We had our summer crime initiative that ran June through September. We deployed about 400 extra police resources over to the area. Now, a good portion of those officers were engaged in, prevention type activities. So engaging youth, taking mentoring, kind of going in and taking the kids that are most at risk of becoming victims and pulling them out of the communities and doing things with them. Okay. But the rest of it was really high visibility engagement and, enforcement stuff. So those results for the summer crime initiative this year was the best we've ever seen. So we saw, upwards of 70 to 80% reductions in violent crime and homicide. All of my summer crime initiative areas were in 6 and 7D this year. So good results for the summer, and that's really kind of the strong. We got to hold summer. I mean, summer is where we see the spikes in violent crime, and I think we did, a good job over the summer. We still have a ways to go. I mean, I'm not going to say that we're doing any kind of victory dance, but we're happy with the results for the summer.
And those are those quality of life crime issues that, while they may not make the headlines, but they're the
property crime. Property crime
people.
It's huge for us, and as the population continues to grow, you know, the property crimes continue to go up. I mean, theft and theft from auto literally are driving all the crime stats. I mean, if you look at property crime in the district, you know, 95% of all crime committed, or 90% of all crime committed, is property crime. Literally, it's breaking into cars, or stealing a wallet from somebody's pocket in a restaurant. It's just the petty theft. But if it's your car that got broken into, or your wallet that got stolen, it's not a small deal. So.
And how and some of this, I'm assuming too, you know, it relies upon people to, like you keep telling them, don't leave your purse in the car, don't leave the GPS sticker in the window. Do you think that part of the battle, I guess the PR part of it, are you getting through to people to try and do what they can to help you?
Well, the difference with DC is that messaging is so much more difficult for us. We can message to residents and we get good results, but we have so many tourists and people that come in from other places, and they're not from the city environment, and so the messages are kind of lost on people who are transient. We have so many hundreds of thousands of visitors who come here, and those are the ones where we see a lot of the downtown thefts and breaking into cars. Right,
because they don't get the message. I know there was one point during the summer where we had a number of women who had been killed. I want to say one weekend, didn't we have 3 women killed?
Yes, the number of women killed in homicide cases, domestic violence cases in particular, are up this year. So I believe
How do you combat
like
that?
12.
How do you get in people's homes? And it just seems to me to be almost insurmountable.
It's more challenging, but it's not. I never want to take the position that we can't prevent a homicide. I think there's always some things that we can do. So with domestic violence, what we've done with a lot of success up until the last year and a half was work with advocates and do lethality assessments. So we study repeat calls for service and repeat domestic violence calls. We take advocates out to the victims. They'll do an assessment with the victim, and typically that assessment, if it shows high lethality or potential for increasing violence, the advocates will work with the victims and get them out of that environment. It's just some victims don't want to get out of an environment or don't realize, I think, how much danger they're in. So it is really a constant, balance. I think the harder part with domestic violence is with children. I mean, you look at the cases involving children this year and last year, and I think around the region, they're so vulnerable as well, and they don't have options. Right. If the abuse isn't brought to somebody's attention, they can't just leave. So it's much, much more difficult to deal with, especially in child and infant cases. Right, because you walk past, say, an apartment building or a house, and you do not know what's going on inside that home, and God forbid you get that call, as with 3-year-old Xavier Lyles. Yes, I was just going to say, And then, we try and remind residents that if you see or hear something that doesn't seem right, typically after a tragedy happens and we talk to neighbors, everybody says, well, I saw this or I heard this and it didn't seem right. Please make that call and let you guys make the determination. Let us make the decision, yes. It's not, I always say 911, if you need the police, dial 911. Let us decide. People are reluctant sometimes to call 911 because they think it's only for like an emergency in progress. It's not. It's really, if you need the police, you dial 911. Let us come out and assess the situation. We'd rather come before something bad happens. Absolutely. Speaking about children, let's talk a little bit about Melisha Rudd. We know that this report came out, and you've got Councilman Jim Graham who's saying he thinks the report was whitewashed, but it doesn't. It involves several agencies. In terms of Metropolitan Police, in this particular case, and Melisha Rudd is the young girl who went missing, and it's presumed she was with Mr. Tatum, and he was found dead of suicide, but her body, or she, has been yet to be found. We don't know if she's alive or dead at this point. Looking back on everything that happened, is there anything MPD could have done differently? Do you feel like your officers did everything that they could within the confines of what your task is as a police department? No, I think we did everything. We went above and beyond. Really, we didn't even have a legitimate criteria to take a missing person report, and we took it anyway. It just, family was saying, nope, she's not missing. We know exactly where she is. Talked to her on the phone yesterday. She's fine. She's not missing. But the detective had an uneasy feeling. That's right. You called for that critical missing. And so they went ahead and did the missing persons report, and as it elevated, quickly, we made a decision to do critical missing, and unfortunately, we also knew from the beginning, once we started getting some facts, that we were weeks behind. So the urgency we moved with, I think, was exactly what it should have been. Unfortunately, it should have happened a couple of weeks sooner, but nobody knew because the family just didn't tell us.
Where does this one rest with you personally? Does this one keep you up at night? Does it make your stomach churn?
It does. It does. And just trying to imagine, what type of, what it must be like for kids in similar situations, and how Relisha has been or is, what conditions she has been subject to is, that's what drives you when you're out there looking. And all the searchers, all the officers who did the searching, you can see it on everybody's face. I mean, that's what everybody wants, is just to find this little girl. So whatever she's been through, we can, get her to a safe environment. So it's very troubling for all of us.
Very troubling. And your officers were back out there, September 15th? Not that long ago. I mean, you're following, it sounds like you're still following tips.
We do. Every tip that comes in, we follow. And we go out and, we get a lot of people who will call and say, it looks like the ground's been disturbed here, or, we've had a couple of psychics call and give us information. So every tip is followed, but no luck so far.
And case is open?
Case is still open. And
investigators still on it?
Still very active. There's still work being done, yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to be back with more. We're going to take a quick break. More after this. Stay with us.